Hello, welcome back to Ken Reads as we continue with our Samantha Learns a lesson. Chapter 5, Progress. Samantha was delighted that Uncle Guard came to visit Saturday. She was even more pleased that he had not brought his friend Cornelia with him. That meant that after tea with Grandmary, Samantha could have him all to herself. The net was set up for lawn tennis. Samantha served the ball over the net. Uncle Guard dived for it and hit back. Samantha swung her racket and missed. Uncle Guard, Samantha called as she brought the ball back closer to the net. I need to know about progress. I need to know for the speaking contest. 2 girls from Miss Crampton's can enter. The winner gets a gold medal. Uncle Guard, I really want to win. Can you help me? Uncle Guard whistled. That's a pretty big order. What do you need to know? What's the best invention? Samantha asked. Her uncle thought for a minute. Well, the electric lights are important, Sam. They make a big difference at night, and more people are getting them. I expect someday people will have electric lights and we won't need gas lamps at all. What about the automobile? Now that's an important invention. People can go anywhere in automobiles. That's silly, Uncle Guard, said Samantha. You can't go anywhere far away from a drugstore. You won't be able to get gasoline. Well, that's not a problem, said Uncle Guard. Just take enough gasoline with you. And you can't go anywhere on a rainy day, said Samantha. Automobiles get stuck in the mud. Have a heart, Sam, laughed Uncle Guard. I thought you liked automobiles. I do, said Samantha as she got ready to hit the ball again, but they're not as much fun as horses. Why not? Samantha reached high and sent the ball sailing. You can't feed carrots to an automobile. For 2 weeks, Samantha worked hard to learn about progress in America. She read books about new inventions. She took notes about the ideas she got from talking to different people. Mrs. Hawkins said the best invention was the gas stove because it didn't get full of ashes like a coal stove. You didn't have to keep coals hot all summer. She said that was progress. And Hawkins told Samantha about factories. He said factories were the most important sign of progress in America, because there was no end to what they could make. He said they could make fast and they made things cheap. And he said that there were more things for people all over the country. And that got Samantha thinking. Every afternoon, Samantha and Nellie had school in the tower room. Samantha wrote parts of her speech in her copybook and read them aloud to see how they sounded. Then she put words a different way and read them aloud again. Nellie worked on reading, geography, and spelling, but she knew how much Samantha wanted to win the speaking contest, and she tried not to disturb her. One afternoon, when Nellie was walking home with Samantha, they saw Edith Endleton standing on the sidewalk with Clarice Van Sicklen, and Clarice and Edith saw them. There's Samantha Parkington keeping company with the servants again, said Edith. She spoke very loudly. Do you think she's practicing to be a washerwoman? Clarice answered just as loudly. Oh, no, I think Nellie's teaching her how to speak for the contest. Well, of course, that's it, said Edith. Maybe we should all take lessons. And Edith and Clarice snickered loudly. Samantha ignored them and took Nellie's hand, but when they walked on and could still hear the girls laughing behind them, Samantha said through clenched teeth, Oh, Nellie, I wish girls were allowed to fight. I surely do. Later that afternoon, when Samantha and Nellie were looking at the Mount Better School, they needed more pencils. Samantha went downstairs to the library to get one from Grandmary's desk. On her way back, she heard voices in the parlor. Even without looking at the calling cards on the table, Samantha knew who was visiting Grandmary. She recognized Mrs. Eddleton's high, shrill voice and Mrs. Ryland's raspy one. She thought she heard Nellie's name. Samantha moved closer to the door and peeked through a crack. Mrs. Eddleton was speaking. Well, the entire neighborhood is shocked, she said. Mrs. Ryland said, Imagine bringing that whole ragged family to live here, right in our neighborhood. I just don't know what got into Mrs. Van Sicklen. Actually, it was my idea, said Grandmary calmly as she poured tea. I urged Mrs. Van Sicklen to give them a home. Their life in the city was quite dreadful. She passed the tea to her guests. I believe Mrs. Van Sicklen is quite pleased with them. They're all good workers. The two visitors looked a little embarrassed, and Mrs. Eddleton continued, My Edith says they're simply filthy, practically in rags. They are poor, of course, answered Grandmary, but I always found them to be as clean as any children, and surprisingly well-mannered. Grandmary, whose back was very straight. Samantha recognized the frosty look in her eye that should warn the visitors to be careful, but the visitors were too busy to take notice. Then Mrs. Ryland asked, Do you really think it's wise to let Samantha spend so much time with them? I believe Samantha is doing them a great deal of good, said Grandmary, and it's our duty to do good where we can. She put her teacup down. Would you care for more tea, ladies? She asked in a voice that was more polite than friendly. Samantha turned and hurried back up the hall. Suddenly, she wanted to be close to Nellie. After lunch on Thursday, all the girls in Miss Crampton's academy filed quietly into the assembly room. They stood in front of their chairs until they had sung a hymn and said a prayer. Then they sat down with their backs straight and their hands folded on their laps. There was no whispering even before Miss Crampton started speaking. As you know, 2 girls from the academy will represent us all in the speaking contest tomorrow evening, Miss Crampton said. Today, Miss Stevens and I will choose 2 girls. There will be 2 girls who give the best speeches about progress in America. Even with her hands folded, Samantha managed to cross her fingers. She took deep breaths to steady herself. Miss Crampton continued, I know that everyone in Miss Stevens' class has worked very hard on the speech, and I know we are all very eager to hear the results of this hard work, so I will say nothing more. Helen Whitney, will you please step forward? Helen walked up, curtsied, and gave her speech. Then each of the girls in Samantha's class spoke. Some of their voices were shaky. Ida Dean spoke softly so the audience could barely hear her, but she didn't faint. At last Samantha's turn came. She was the last girl to speak. Her voice was clear and steady. Factories in modern America, she began. American factories are the finest in the world. They are true signs of our progress. It used to take many hours to make a pair of shoes or a table by hand. Now machines can make hundreds of shoes and hundreds of tables in just a few hours. And they make thread and clothes and toys and bicycles and furniture and even automobiles. These things cost less money than they used to because they are made by machines. So now more people can buy things they want and the things they need. This is progress. Truly, we cannot go forward into the 20th century without our factories and without our machines. They are the greatest sign of progress in America. There was applause in the room. Miss Stevens nodded in approval. Samantha beamed as she walked to her seat. Miss Crampton looked immensely pleased as she stepped in front of the room. All of our young ladies have done a splendid job, she said. I am proud of each one of them. And now it gives me great pleasure to announce our winners. Will Miss Samantha Parkington please step forward? Samantha rose and walked to the front of the room again. Miss Crampton handed her an award. The certificate was crisp and smooth in her hand. She felt her heart swell with pleasure as she heard the applause around her. When the clapping stopped, Miss Crampton announced the other winner. It was Edith Eddleton. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.